Good afternoon, dear friends. Once again, we are here this beautiful afternoon, London, UK, United Kingdom. And we know we are having friends from another countries watching today. That is very important, this talk. And before carry on, I'd like to invite you all to our opening prayer, a short prayer for this event. We ask Almighty Father, dear Lord, dear benefactors, that are helping us in this event, in our daily lives. Be with us today, that we are really organizing with love and care, the talk that bring light to everyone everywhere. So now we ask our permission, dear Lord, to enter in all homes and hearts of our friends for the entire world, and ask our permission to start our meeting now. So be it. So welcome everyone once again. Thank you all for being with a prayer with us. And it is a pleasure to be here with you all in this beautiful event. I will present Adam Osborne. He is co-founder and co-coordinator of Kardec Group in the UK, having previously had the opportunity to learn about Spiritism and work in Spiritist centers in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Kardec Group comprises of the Spiritist Society of Windsor and Maidenhead and the Spiritist Society of Bicester. Adam works professionally as a translation manager and has contributed to English translations of Spiritist material, including videos, letters, articles, and books. He also served as a deputy chairperson of BAS, our Spiritist UK Federation. Adam lives in Oxfordshire, UK, with his wonderful wife, Valeria, our dear friend. So Adam today will give to us a talk, The Golden Rule. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you, Adam. Now I pass over you.
Okay, thank you, Elsa. And thank you to all our friends in the UK and around the world who are connected to us right now on Facebook, YouTube, via Kardec Radio. No matter where you're from, thank you for being with us. And I can see some really great friends are already connected to us right now. And so it's a pleasure to be with you again to talk about this topic of the Golden Rule, something which I find is always a very interesting topic to talk about. But don't worry if you've not seen this talk before or you don't know about the Golden Rule very much. But we're going to follow this and look at the following questions. So, what is the Golden Rule? Where does it come from? Why should we be concerned with it? And what does Spiritism itself tell us regarding it? So first of all, what is the Golden Rule? Well, it's a label that we put to a set of phrases and guidelines that help us to reflect about our behaviors. And it's something that's been around for a very long time. And perhaps the best phrase to represent the Golden Rule is the following: love your neighbor as yourself. Now, I'm sure that many people have heard of this expression before, but do we actually understand what it means? Should we be concerned with it? Is it something that's easy for us to apply in our day-to-day lives? So very important things for us to actually think about regarding this. So it's always good to start and look at the attributes of what it is. So here are the attributes of the Golden Rule to help us understand a bit more of what it actually is. So first of all, it is the basic guide of how we should treat others, the need of respect towards each other. It's known as the law of reciprocity, that we get whatever it is that we give. It's part of the laws of cause and consequence. It helps us to understand our connections with each other. It allows us to see our position within society, within work, within the family, within any kind of organization or hierarchy, and how we should behave within that structure. The Golden Rule shows us why we should have empathy towards each other, for the situations that others are in, for the kinds of things that they might be going through. It helps us to understand the usage of patience and tolerance. And it also helps us to justify and explain the need of charity. Now, these are just a few attributes. There are others, but these are the core ones, especially with what we're going to be looking at today. So, now that we've got a rough idea of what it is, we can now look at where it came from and when it first started to appear. Now, many people believe that it started with the New Testament. Many people believe it's newer, others think it's much older. So I'm going to present now a historical timeline of where we know it has been written in one form or another. And all the dates that I'm going to show are just approximations. So we're going to start around 4,000 years ago in 2000 BC in Egypt and look at something called the Laws of Maat. Now, Maat was an Egyptian goddess, and she's worshipped around 4,000 to 4,500 years ago. And she was the personification of truth and justice. All of her guidance was seen as the ethical values that Egyptians should follow throughout their daily lives, and the guidance and guidelines for society, both very interestingly for incarnates and discarnates. And all of these guides were collated and grouped into a set of items called the 42 Negative Confessions, which were a set of declarations such as, I have not stolen, I have not attacked any man, I have not acted with evil rage. And this list, these 42 items, these 42 negative confessions, were part of what's known as the Book of the Dead. And these phrases would normally be inscribed on people's tombs, just to make sure that once they're in the afterlife, Maat would give them the correct kind of justice. And we can find part of these laws written down in the story called The Eloquent Peasant. And this story was composed, we think, around 1850 BC. And we have in there the message, that which you hate to be done to you, do not do to another. So here we have 4,000 years ago in ancient Egypt, possibly the first written message with moral guidance for how to consider our behavior towards each other. So moving on from here, let's go forward a few hundred years to approximately 1300 BC, to another event that occurred in Egypt with this guy called Moses and the event called the Exodus. Now, Moses was a very important prophet, but before that, he was an adoptive Egyptian prince. And his story is that when he discovered his heritage, that he was in fact the child of one of the Israelite slaves who had been there for 300-400 years, he started to look at the Egyptians with completely fresh eyes, in a completely new way. And he saw how all these slaves were being abused And then he rejected his Egyptian family, this royal family, because he was a prince. And he fled Egypt. Then one day, he was working as a shepherd. He got himself a new job, he got a wife, and he was there as a shepherd and was looking for lost sheep. And he came across this bush, this burning bush, which started to communicate with him. And the bush said it was God. And then God, which is the same God we follow in the Abrahamic Judeo-Christian faiths, that God then said to Moses, "Go and free the slaves from Egypt. Go and free my children from Egypt." And so with that, we have the Exodus story that we find in the Old Testament, the one with the plagues, the Pharaoh, and all those things. And part of this story, we have actually a mediumistic event where what's known as the 10 Commandments are received. And these commandments are things such as do not worship idols, do not kill, do not steal, do not gossip or spread rumors. And just a note here that commandments isn't necessarily the right word for this, but duties or guidelines, because really these are guidelines of how to be considered a good person within society, a good person now and in the afterlife. And so later on in the Old Testament, still part of the Exodus story, we have the following bits of text from the books of Exodus and Leviticus. In Exodus, we have, "Love your neighbor as yourself." And in Leviticus, "You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against your kinsfolk." And, these were quite important instructions, guidelines for all these people that were fleeing Egypt, these 600,000 people that were fleeing Egypt, because they needed to learn how to bond and live and get on well with each other in peace, in harmony. And, especially as they're going to end up spending 40 years together in the desert. So moving on now from Egypt, we're going to head east and go to Nepal to around 600 BC and look at the story of Buddha. So Siddhartha Gautama was born in southern Nepal in around 630 BC in an area called Lumbini. And at that time, all the Indian religions were going through a very philosophical transformation. Now, Siddhartha was born into a very wealthy family, and that family wanted to protect him from the outside world. One day, when he realized that he would have to suffer illness, old age, death, he actually left home in order to find the root cause of human suffering, because it's something that upset him. And so he spent many years going around learning from different teachers. And it's said that one day, when he was almost at the point of giving up, he sat down underneath a fig tree thinking, okay, I'm almost giving up. I need to relax. I need to think. And he reached the state of enlightenment. He reached nirvana and then transformed to become Buddha, a very insightful philosopher and spiritual leader. Now, part of the Buddhist teachings are the scriptures known as the Tripitaka. And in these, Buddha gives lots of lessons, including the following. Hurt not others in ways that you yourself would find hurtful. And putting oneself in the place of another, one should not kill, nor cause another to kill. So, we've only looked at a couple of cases here, but we're already getting very similar ideas and teachings of behavior and respect between these three items. So heading east a bit more, let's now head to China to around 500 BC and talk about Confucius. Now, Confucius was born into a military family, and he worked in various governmental roles. He was seen as many people as a good role model for proper conduct and righteousness, and apparently many people would go to his village to talk to him because everyone thought, wow, he knows what he's doing. He's a really righteous and moral person. And he was a philosopher, he was a politician. He was a politician for many years. He worked in the government, and many of the philosophical works that he came up with were a collection called the Analects, and these were parable-like stories. And in the Analects, we can find the following: what you do not wish for yourself, do not do to others. And there's also another story in the Analects where it said that a disciple comes up and asks, Master, is there any one word that could guide a person throughout life? And the master turned around and replied, how about reciprocity? Never impose on others what you would not choose for yourself. So now we're starting to see that various cultures around the world were receiving similar messages and instructions relating to conduct, to discipline, social behavior. So we're going to jump forward a bit more and go west and go to Greece and talk about a guy called Isocrates. Now, Isocrates, he was an orator, a speechwriter, a lecturer, and he was born, we believe, in around 436 BC, and he lived to be possibly about 98 years old, and was actually contemporary of Socrates, who was born in 470 BC, and Plato, born in 428 BC. So they more or less knew each other. And one of Isocrates' work, this guy, Isocrates, not Socrates, one of his works is something called the Nicocles. And one of these, well, these are actually sets of talks that he gave to the people of Cyprus. And in one of these, there's this following text: do not do to others that which angers you when they do it to you. Practice nothing in your deeds for which you condemn others in your words. Now, it's actually very possible that these were the teachings of Socrates, which Isocrates wrote down. And so, because Socrates himself didn't actually write down any of his things, so it's not necessary that we know who said this first, but it was written down by this guy here, Isocrates. Now, from Greece, we're going to head back east to India, to roughly the same era, and look at the Mahabharata. Now, the Mahabharata is very important Indian scripture, and it was compiled by this guy on the left here, Vyasa. And the story goes that he was helped by the elephant-headed deity Ganesh. And Ganesh worked as the scribe, so writing down all of the story. And the story itself, the scripture, the Mahabharata, were events, a big dramatic event that was supposed to have happened around 1000, 1500 BC. And the text is also very important within the Hindu faiths, because within there we have the Bhagavad Gita, which is central to Hindu and Hare Krishna faiths, because it talks a lot about Krishna, the Hindu deity Krishna, and all of his aspects of life. And so it's vital for them. And within the Mahabharata, we have the following passage, which is part of a conversation. And it says, one should never do something to others that one would regard as an injury to one's own self. In brief, This is Dharma. Anything else is succumbing to desire. Now, Dharma is the Sanskrit name for cosmic law, the behaviors needed for righteous duty, for righteous living, the laws of the universe itself. So in the Mahabharata, they're actually equating good behavior to being a fundamental part of the universal laws. Now we're going to head back west a little bit and go to Persia and look at the religion of Zoroastrianism. So, Zoroaster, or Zarathustra as he's known as in some languages, was a prophet and spiritual leader who was born roughly 1500 BC. So he was around roughly the same time as Moses. And he was a very insightful person. He was considered as one of the very first philosophers. And his teachings are considered as being a key point of influence for other religions and philosophers. And of course, the Zoroastrian faith itself is founded on his teachings. Now, like I said, he was spiritual, and he actually taught about interesting things. So he taught about monotheism, the idea of having just one God. He taught about the idea of reducing external religious ceremonies. He taught about ideas about the afterlife, as well as cause and consequence. And so there are two teachings that are attributed to him, two phrases. The first is, well, out of many, the first that I'd like to mention is this one. Whatever is disagreeable to yourself, do not do unto others. The other, bit similar. Whatever you do not approve for yourself, do not do for anyone else. When you have acted in this manner, you are righteous. When you have acted in this manner, you are righteous. Very strong words from him. And so let's stay in the Middle East, because we can see that that's been a bit of a hub for this kind of philosophy to come from. And go to about 50 BC to a little country called Israel and talk about someone called Hillel the Elder. Now, for those who haven't heard of him, Hillel the Elder was a rabbi and philosopher. He was a very important person in the religious and political landscape of Israel and the province of Judah, as it was called at the time. And he was born around 110 BC, and he studied the Jewish religious laws. He became a respected rabbi and one of the teachers of the laws. And he founded one of the main schools of thought, the House of Hillel, which still exists nowadays. We can find in various countries. In America, there's a few. And he promoted this idea of talking about the aspects of ethics, theology, religious practice, day-to-day life, openly. No, just normal, philosophizing. And Hillel became the president of the court and place of judgment, the Sanhedrin, which, if anyone's read the book Paul and Stephen, you'd have heard of the Sanhedrin. And so Hillel was really important to that. And he was also really important to spreading a new idea at the time called social justice order, which was the concept that everyone has the direct responsibility for not only their own moral, spiritual, and material welfare, but to look out for and have responsibility for the moral, spiritual, and material welfare of others, of society in general. And there are many phrases and things that are attributed to him, which are written down in various commentary books, including this first one. Do not judge your friend until you have stood in their place. So a bit of empathy happening there. And there's a quick story I'd like to say about him. And that one day, a non-believer at the time went to another similar teacher called Shammai. And Shammai also had a philosophical house of study, and this guy goes to him and says, Rabbi Shammai, you're a great teacher. In fact, you're one of the greatest teachers. And to prove that you're a great teacher, while I stand on one foot, I want you to teach me all of the laws of the Torah, the Old Testament. And obviously Shammai knew that this would be something quite impossible to do. How can you pass on such knowledge, such information to someone while they stand on just one foot without them falling over? And so he thought for a moment and said, you know what? I can't do that. Go to Hillel. He can do it. But knowing that Hillel also would fail with this. So the guy goes off and talks to Hillel, and he says, Rabbi Hillel, you are the greatest teacher. You know everything. While I stand on one foot, teach me everything that's in the Torah. Oh, Hillel apparently just waited for a moment, thought, and they said, okay, go ahead. So while the guy was standing on his leg, Hillel waited a moment more and then turned around and said, that which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. That is the entire Torah. The rest is just commentary. Now go and study. So Hillel was bringing this idea that it's not just a case of passing information, but going to study, to look at things clearly from different angles, to find ways that we can perhaps apply these teachings to our daily lives. And so we're going to look at the last person on this historical timeline. So we're going to stay in Israel to around 30 AD and talk about this next chap here. Now, I'm sure that you've heard of this gentleman, Yeshua ben Yosef, Yeshua son of Yosef, Jesus son of Joseph, Jesus of Nazareth, son of Mary. Now, he was a rabbi and philosopher, and according to current calculations, he was actually born 4 BC. And I'm not going to talk about the story of him and his disciples and all those things, but he talked about many things in relation to the Golden Rule. And there's a couple of passages from the Sermon on the Mount which I want to mention right now. The first one is from Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. Do to others what you would want them do to you. That is the meaning of the law of Moses and the teaching of the prophets. And so by the law of Moses, he's talking about the Torah, the Old Testament, and the Jewish laws that people like Rabbi Hillel that we just saw helped to spread. And the prophets were actually people such as Moses, Noah, Jonah, all these people from the Old Testament, the major and minor prophets who would nowadays be considered as mediums from within a spiritualist view. And the other passage is the passage from Luke. And in Luke it says, do to others what you would want them do to you. So quite clear messages, which, it's taken about 2,000 years to get to this point. And so to continue with the Gospel of Matthew, in chapter 22, verses 34 to 40, we have the following, which we can also find in the Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec, a very important book. But before I read it, I want to give a bit of background of this event, of this story. And so in this, Jesus was there at the temple in Jerusalem, the holiest and most important place for the whole Jewish people at that time. And he was there talking, philosophizing with anyone who wanted to listen. And that was actually something that only rabbis would normally be allowed to do. So people who went and were rabbis and teachers within all the synagogues everywhere. And so various people came up to him and started asking him questions, some trying to test him, some just trying to get information to see how well he knew the scriptures, the laws, the Torah. And, it was and still is actually completely allowed and encouraged to talk and philosophize about these things. So it was a normal practice, a normal thing to happen on any day of the week apart from the day of rest. Now, one of the people coming up to him was a Pharisee, and they've been given a bit of a bad name in the New Testament, but they were actually a very philosophical and spiritual Jewish group who completely accepted the idea of discussing and commenting on the Old Testament, on the Torah. They fully believed in the immortality of the soul, the concepts of spirit, afterlife, reincarnation. And we have to remember that the actual idea, the formation of rabbis, teachers, is actually something that started with the Pharisees as well. So this Pharisee comes up, so someone spiritual comes up to Jesus and says, "Teacher, Rabbi, what is the greatest commandment in the law?" And Jesus turns around and says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." So all the law, meaning everything that's written in the Torah, everything from the Old Testament, could be based on these phrases. Everything that the prophets had brought could be based on these phrases. So great message, really strong confirmation, the importance of looking at our behavior, the need of personal study, confirmations of the same message that had been written for almost 2,000 years by this point. Now, there are, of course, many, many other moments throughout history, even up until recent years, where people have received the same message and tried to convey the same message. And we can see it within, for example, Islam, Sikhism, the African religions, Yoruba, the indigenous First Nation religions of North America, South America, Polynesian races. But what about Spiritism? What is it that this philosophy that Kardec brought to us 160, 170 years ago, what does that say about it? Well, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, we have chapter 11, Love Your Neighbor as Yourself. So we have a chapter completely dedicated to the Golden Rule. And in this chapter, item 4 of this chapter, Kardec himself brings a reflection on the passage that I just read from Matthew a moment ago. And Kardec says, "To love your neighbor as yourself, to do to others as you would have them do to you, expresses the most complete form of charity, because it summarizes all of humanity's obligations toward their fellow beings." All of humanity's obligations toward their fellow beings. Not just some, all. And Kardec continues at the same item. We can find no guide we can find no guide to take as an example that is more guaranteed in this respect than that we should do to others what we would have them do to us. What right have we to demand that they behave in any better manner, that they be more benevolent or more devoted to us than we are to them? So Kardec is actually helping us to understand the moral aspects of the Golden Rule, that no matter how we write it, rewrite it, rephrase it, paraphrase it, it is, as he says, the most guaranteed guide, the best guide for us to actually follow regarding our behavior towards each other. And within the same chapter, we have messages from the spirits of Lazarus and Fenelon, which help us to reflect a bit more on our own behaviors and attitudes. And so Lazarus brings to us the following: in order to advance towards this goal, each person must overcome their instincts, that is to say, to perfect their sentiments. And then Fenelon continues with this. Love is of a divine essence, and everyone, from the first to the last, has a spark of this sacred fire in the bottom of their hearts. So this sacred fire that Fenelon's talking about, we can relate this to the Old Testament, to Genesis, where it said that God creates humans and gives to them the divine spark, the breath of life, the sacred breath, sacred fire of life. So Fenelon's really saying that charity is a form of love. And that is that's divine element. And we all have that within us. We all have it within our reach. And so continuing with this chapter, item 12 is about selfishness. And the Spirit Pascal brings us the following. If charity reigned on earth, then evil could not prevail. It would fade away in shame. It would hide, seeing that wherever it went, it would feel out of place. So we can see that just within this one chapter of the Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec, we have a very Kardec way of seeing things, because he was a scientist, he was a researcher, he was an educator. We have an objective overview, an analytical observation, a methodology, and a hypothetical conclusion regarding the Golden Rule. This way for us to understand what it means, how to apply it. But it doesn't stop there. So within Spiritism, we also have the Spirits book, also a very core book for us to study. And in the Spirits book, we've got various items, especially here in chapter 12 of part 3, which talks about the moral perfection, the moral laws. And we have various observations about the attitudes and behaviors we need for our evolution. And the Spirits book, set of questions and answers, questions posed by mediums, answers from spirits. Question 893. Which is the most meritorious of all the virtues? And they say, the spirits say, all virtues are meritorious, because all are signs of progress on the path of the good. However, the highest virtue consists in the sacrifice of one's own interests for the good of one's neighbor, without ulterior motives. The greatest merit is that which is based on the most disinterested charity. So, a very firm message here about helping others, about not wanting anything in return, to do things without needing or demanding anything in return, about how we should treat others out of respect, the same level of respect that we would want for ourselves. And continuing with this, question 918. By what signs can we recognize in individuals the real progress that will raise their spirit within the spirit hierarchy? Now, Kardec's comment on this is very interesting. And he says, truly moral individuals are those who practice the law of justice, love, and charity in its most complete purity. If they interrogate their conscience concerning their actions, they will ask if they have done to others what they would want them to do unto them. And this is followed up by a fantastic question about applying the Golden Rule. 919. What is the most effective means for improving ourselves in this life and for resisting the draw of evil? A sage has told you, know thyself. Self-knowledge is therefore the key to individual improvement. Now, these are just a couple of items from the Spirits book, but through this we now have a good set of references about where the Golden Rule has come from, the different versions of it, some of the snippets from what Spiritism itself mentions about it, but how it can impact us, how we should be considering it regarding our own personal transformation. And so, why should we consider this, especially right now? And, we've been going through such an odd time the past few years, so much political tension between different countries, political tension due to Brexit, Me Too, Black Lives Matter, this viral pandemic, which has caused social distancing, lockdowns, travel restrictions, anxieties in America, Brazil, and other countries due to this virus, the number of cases of this virus, economic upheaval because of this, resulting in lost income, redundancies, bankruptcy, company closures, tensions in different countries due to religious and racial intolerance. Even within technology, there's many rumors, there's many tensions going on between people not selling software the correct way, or using things the right way, or not allowing you to download different bits of different apps for your phone. And most recently, tension in Lebanon due to the recent accident there. So all these things which have been building up, causing anxiety, tension, stress, disruption. And so within all this, it's understandable that not everyone is able to find the inner balance they need to counteract these disturbances and to be able to live in a peaceful and harmonious way. Various people, not everyone, but various people have lost sight of the true aspect of fraternity and solidarity. And at the start of this lockdown process, many people were jumping up and down, reaching out to each other, talking to each other, caring for each other. And now that lockdown restrictions have eased around the world, there's been a decrease in solidarity. There have been less people talking to each other, less people watching out for each other, less people caring for each other. Many people returning to materialistic ideas, going to hairdressers, clothes shopping, pubs, restaurants, holidays, things that could, in matter of fact, just wait. So all the good things that have happened recently have started to slide down again. So what can we do to apply this, to adjust our behaviors, to look at our attitudes and perceptions and apply the golden rule to our daily lives? Because it's needed. So let's look again at some of the aspects we saw at the start of this presentation. So, laws of consequence, empathy, patience, tolerance, charity. So how can we apply this? How can we apply the golden rule to our daily lives? First of all, listen to others. And by that, I mean listen properly, to take time and actually listen to what someone says. Be patient. Take care of the details, the tone, the emotion. Perhaps they're actually avoiding to say certain things to not upset or to reveal anything. So we need to learn how to listen properly. We need to learn how to practice empathy, to think about how and why people are going through certain things, how and why people are behaving in certain ways, how and why they may be saying certain things. We need to be patient, because not everyone talks in the same way as us. Not everyone will want to do things in the same way as us. Not everyone will understand things in the same way as us. We don't like it when people are impatient with us. So why should we be impatient with others? We need to consider each other as siblings, brothers and sisters within humanity, that we all come from the same starting point. We have the same final goal, And we're all on the same planet together for a reason. We need to avoid giving criticism. We don't like it when others criticize us. We don't like it when people judge us. So why should we criticize and judge others? We need to have empathy and consider the hardship or prejudice another has suffered. We need to put ourselves in their shoes, because we can't understand someone's life story, their challenges, their struggles, their background, unless we have had exactly the same experience as them. We can possibly relate to it, but we might not fully understand it. We need to allow ourselves to be calm, because it's only once we're calm that we can think rationally enough to help others and to help ourselves. And with that, we have to elevate our thoughts every day through meditation, through prayer, through any spiritual connection with mentors, with guides. Raise our thoughts to find a spark of peace within us, the calmness we need in order to not be irritated or impatient with others, the calmness we need for tolerance. We need to be a friend in the very true sense of what a friend is. Because there are times when we need a friend. We need to learn to be more loving and more compassionate, to respect others for who they are and how they are. Because we cannot change ourselves. Sorry, we can change ourselves, but we cannot change others. So we cannot change others, we can change ourselves. So, we need to be loving and compassionate with ourselves. And all of these things, in fact, we have to learn how to apply to ourselves. Because there's no point learning how to treat others well if you don't know how to treat yourself with the same respect. We can only truly progress along our spiritual evolution once we have learned how to respect others as ourselves. And these are only a few of the many ways that we can apply the law of reciprocity, the golden rule, this idea of love your neighbor as yourself. And before I end, there's a couple of things I want to leave with you. The first is from a BBC interview with the Dalai Lama back in June. And he said in this interview, the whole world should pay more attention to how to transform our emotions. And that's so true of the current situation we're in. It's so true for humanity in general. And fortunately, luckily, we can see the same message from Andre Louise, Joanna G. Angelis, all the teachings of Buddha, Zoroaster, Matt, Moses, Jesus, Krishna. So perhaps after 4,000 years, we should start to learn how to consider this. We should start to learn how to apply this to our daily lives. And for my final thought, now I don't remember where I've heard this, but it always sticks with me. We are all on the same path, just wearing different shoes. So thank you for your time and patience in listening. If you have any questions, please send them through now. I'm more than happy to answer any questions anyone has. If you want to contact with us at Kardec Group, here are details. And one last thing, please go and subscribe to our YouTube channel follow us on Facebook as well, because in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be launching a couple of interesting announcements. And if you subscribe to us on YouTube and Facebook, you'll be the first to know. So thank you very much. Back to you, Elsa.
Adam, really, really amazing. It's the second time that I listen because it's really good, especially when you finalize with Dalai Lama when he said about the emotions. And we know how important it is really to hold sometimes, to learn about our emotions, how we can conduct our emotions. And Vanessa Anceloni, she had a very nice topic and talk about, and she is the founder of School of Emotions. That means that people can really understand how to hold your horses, how to use your emotions, that the entire humanity can evolve in the right shoes. That's very important, really, really. Your comment is really good. So thank you so much, Adam. And before we finish, if people, there is no question, as far as I've seen here, some comments about Lawrence, Edith, Elaine Raup, Regilda, people that are saying that's good, thank you. And I'd like to invite all our listeners, people, friends of BAS, friends of the Spiritist movement in the UK, to participate with us. Be aware that on 10th of September, we are organizing the entire day full of talks about life, preserving life. It, of course, is a World Suicide Prevention Day, but we are talking about life and giving guidelines, giving hints to people really live in a better way with emotions or no emotions, but how really use our time. So today, I will pass again over to Adam. That's first. I'd like really to say thank you so much on behalf of the BAS. Thank you for our friends that are member of the BAS, so Windsor Maidenhead Spiritist Society, that Adam and Val are coordinators, that is organizing very nice talks Monday evenings in English, and we are learning so much about the Spirit book, questions and answers. And thank you once again to everybody that they are parting of here now. And Adam, kindly give us the final prayer, will be lovely. Thank you.
Okay. So I'd like to invite everyone just to take a moment to make yourselves physically comfortable. Ignore any distractions around you. And just focus on your thoughts, on your breathing, on your state of well-being. Raising your thoughts to all the great spirituality around, to all our benefactors, our mentors, our spiritual guides, to all our friends who are always there for us, to watch over us and guide us. We ask that they can bring to us, to this planet, to this great brotherhood which we are part of, as brothers and sisters in humanity, both on the physical and spiritual planes of life, all the positive energies, the positive vibrations that we need as individuals, as families, as groups, as a society, within the countries we're in, on this planet which we are fortunate to be on. We ask that wonderful, luminous, healing vibrations can flow to all those around the planet who need, all those who require uplift, faith, patience, and tolerance. to all our friends and family around the world who may be going through struggles and challenges, to all our brothers and sisters who need help and support, we ask that they, as well as everyone else on this planet, can receive the strength, the patience, the faith, and peace that we need to overcome the challenges we have, to face the moments that we have, so we can lift up our heads, connect to our mentors and guides, and ask that they can be with us, to watch over us, to keep us safe with the strength and knowledge we need, now and always. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Kardec Radio, that is hosting this event with us. Thank you, our dear people from BAS, British Union of Spiritist Societies. Thank you for all the other people that are really keen to be with us in our English talks. Once again, God bless all of us. Thank you. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.